listening to Two Babies in a Business, a podcast about business, marketing, growth strategy, staff, clients, babies, and marriage. I'm Christina. This is Peter. We're founders and leaders of CIPR Communications, and we are back at it. New shirts.
New shirts. Woo! Today we're talking about, so kind of just a recap here, the series that we're in is all about hiring in a house versus hiring an agency. And today's podcast is all about setting your agency up for success. And really, I would just say, while we're talking about setting an agency up for success, it's really setting your business up for success in terms of working with an agency, because that's really all that matters. Is your business and its success. But obviously, you want your agency to be successful as well, I would hope.
Yeah, I feel like there's like so many directions to take this. There's one that you already know this, Peter, that I'm like particularly passionate about. And it's this kind of thought about business maturity in terms of utilizing an agency. And I think what we've seen over the course of kind of many clients and even just over the course of us as a growing business is you reach this kind of maturity in being a business owner or even being a marketing manager within a department where you know what needs to be done and by whom and when and the direction you're going. And I think as we've worked through this series, but we've also worked through like a marketing strategy and budget, like all those things become really important. But I think, there are certain businesses that are at stages where they just don't necessarily know how an agency can fit into their current business makeup well. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't set anyone up for success, right?
Right.
As soon as that starts to happen, and I've seen this in some clients where as soon as it starts to happen as the agency, I can see it because there's this, growing this growing kind of, I don't want to say distrust, but like trust gets put back on the table. Like we're no longer an investment, we're a cost. And ROI is always important, but like ROI seems to be in every single email, and you kind of lose sight of that piece.
Yeah. And I think on a similar vein, and this is probably a related thing, is like have realistic timelines, because it's sort of a similar vein. It's like you can't hire an agency and then like a month later expect that, oh, why am I not seeing 1,000 people coming through my door? Like, it's just, I'm sorry, I don't care what you're doing. It's very unlikely to work that way. I mean, you might have, things happen and sometimes you get success right away, but more often than not, it takes time, and it takes time to, first of all, often, it takes time to just get passwords, and it just takes time to get access to digital assets. And it takes time to like figure each other out and how and what you really need. And so, I think and I think those two things go kind of together, like that realistic timelines and kind of the maturity, I guess, of the business, or the, sort of are two of the same thing. And, and I agree with you. It's like, if you've decided to go with an agency, you've already decided you're going to trust them. You should try to trust them for like a few months before you really start questioning everything they do. Because I could tell you from an agency perspective, it's like, it's a pretty quick, like once it's, to your point, questions about trust all the time at every step of the way, and you've barely even started working. I, as an agency owner, probably want to kind of get rid of that relationship pretty quickly, because, it's just like major red flags all over the place. Right. So, I mean, a couple of things you can do, and I would recommend you do, is maybe start off with a project of some kind. So, don't go into a 12-month retainer having no idea what you need and what you want. Like, I know a lot of agencies, including us, try to always push people into a retainer, but, we always try to start with a project, either a website or a digital marketing blueprint, or, competitive analysis, or a, website quality review. I mean, we have a whole bunch of like foot in the door type of offers where, we could do some research stuff that has value for your business no matter what, but gives us an opportunity to get to know you and gives you an opportunity to kind of get to know the agency a little bit. And I think that's probably the best starting point.
Yeah.
And then, sort of kind of go in slowly. You don't have to jump in 100% with both feet right away. But if you're going to jump in, then, stay committed for, I would say, at least 3 months. Um, because it's going to take 3 months really for everybody to get their bearings in a project and in a retainer.
Yeah, I think, again, I internally I always talk about like our websites as dating, right? So the client is dating us and we're dating the client, and um that a website takes time to build. So you go through really a honeymoon stage of, oh, this is so great and things are great, and you go through this kind of hard stage of, oh, maybe I should see other people. And then I feel like, well, once you're at that website launch, as long as you've gotten through this, like, approvals and the dance of standing up a website, by the end, you have a pretty good sense of whether you want to ask this person to marry you or not. And
Right.
that marriage is a retainer, really, right? Are we going to do this long term? Are we going to get engaged and move forward? I think too that, like, I love that. The timeline piece, testing out a project, um, but also this, like, have a really kind of honest conversation internally about process and like approvals. And I love that you brought up passwords. Like, I'll actually talk about Luminate Bookkeeping, which is a new client of ours. We're building a website for them. They're out of Squamish, and before they even kind of knocked on the door, they had everything. I'm gonna like go throw some gold stars over to Dawn there, but like all the passwords, content, they thought about everything they wanted on the website. And I'm not saying you need to do that, but like, there is that maturity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
clearly one of them in this business has been through a web project before. They know the questions that are coming. I mean, but if you step back and think about it, even if you haven't engaged an agency yet and you're thinking, it's like, what are the things they're going to need? Well, you're going to need access. So, if you want to speed up a process of jumping in with an agency, probably getting your passwords in order and understanding that. And then also just having those conversations internally. Actually, your like find, grind, mind model that you brought up, it's like, what are the things we're delegating? Is everyone on the same page? Because I think too, when I think about maturity, I even think of us like back in the day and stepping on, you and I step on each other's toes, or staff, or when you reach this maturity, that toe stepping, I don't want to say stops completely, but you have a pretty good idea of your lanes.
Yeah.
And in an immature business, or a business that hasn't kind of reached that maturity yet, the lanes are still loose.
Yeah. And I don't want to say that, like, if you're not a mature business, you shouldn't engage it. That's not what we're saying at all. But I think it's like, hey, listen, we've had some of our best clients have been people who are like, I don't know anything about this. This intimidates me. I need you guys to hold my hand every step of the way. And you know what? Like, so that's the other kind of, you want to set your agency up for success. Like, be honest and transparent. Like, this is not about egos. Like, this stuff is confusing. It's hard. It's gonna test your company. Like, agency is gonna come in and start asking questions. They're gonna have their set processes. They're gonna have all these ways to do things, and it's going to challenge your business in certain ways that you probably aren't expecting, because it's some third party coming in and trying to integrate their processes. There's a cultural kind of integration that happens, right? And it's okay if you don't know. It's okay if you're intimidated. It's okay if you have a million questions. Like, as an agency, I'd rather have that than, oh, I gonna pretend I know everything and then just sort of like go through the motions or whatever, and then find out that we didn't get an answer back from you for 3 months because you were like because you didn't know the answer. Right. It's like, and it's happened before, right? We've had
Yeah.
people who have literally like not gotten back to us for 3 months, and projects have stalled. And it's like, as it turns out, this was confusing and hard for them. It's like, you know what, like, we're all humans.
It's true.
We don't know much about many of our businesses, and they're all there's many technical business. Like, we know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And
Yeah.
we don't know what we don't know. Right. And like, it's all about people and humans. At the end of the day, the agency company relationship is really fundamentally a human to human relationship, which is the most important part of its success. And the more humans can come together in a somewhat exposed way, in terms of here's what we don't know, here's what you don't know, we're all coming into this to learn together,
Yeah.
you're much more likely to be success than sort of, egos and walls and barriers and that kind of thing, right? So like, I think that's part of, I think, business maturity to some extent. That's also part of personal maturity, I guess, to some
I
extent.
I totally think so. Like, to your point about like mature business, to me it has nothing to do with like the number of years in business or the size of a company or the pillar or the lateral that they're in, or like to me it has nothing to do with that, and way more about that human instinct process. Like when I think of a mature business, I think of like my mind immediately goes to leadership, partly because I think I have had this kind of, over the course of since this business since CIPR has existed, this like real kind of maturity and moving myself along. And it's like, we probably now are the maturest we've been, not necessarily because we have sat in a position where we've had more staff than we have now,
Mm-hmm.
but just because we had more staff doesn't mean that we're a more mature business. Or
Yeah.
there are all those factors that I think on paper can say, oh, I'm very mature, I'm a very mature business, but like that mindset, you are. Even this morning we were onboarding a new client and just reiterating to them, like, as CIPR, we're client focused, and that means that we don't want to just be an agency, we want to be on your team. And I think there's a certain amount of maturity that needs to come from a marketing manager or a business owner that now all of a sudden goes, oh, these aren't people over here that do
Right.
something for me. These people are like my trusted advisors, they're on my
Yeah.
team, they're there to make me look good.
Yeah.
And I think too, you got to really kind of evaluate yourself. I remember being in corporate Calgary and going, oh man, this like agency is so much smarter than I am. They're going to make me look
At this one particular thing, right? Like in this, yeah.
totally. They're going to make me look bad. Oh gosh. Like,
Yeah.
and you put all your defenses up and now you don't have a great working relationship. Whereas you come at it from a bit of a more mature perspective and you're like, these people are my team and here to help me look really good in
Right.
places where by myself I couldn't look good.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of that, like, to your point of, you don't know what you don't know. It's like laying that at the door.
Yeah. Leaving the egos at the door and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think fundamentally trust is absolutely 100% everything. At the fundamentally, as everything we're talking about, the core of everything we're talking about comes down to trust. And I mean, if you can't trust your agency, you're not going to succeed, and it's going to be a painful relationship, and like you're going to have all kinds of problems, and like it's just and trust me, like as an agency, we don't want that. Like I want to work with companies that feel like we're part of their team and we're partners and we're rowing in the same direction, and I mean, it's just that speed of trust and the synergy that gets created when that trust is there is just like, it's like, 1+1 is 5 kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the constant questions and trust and this and that, and don't get me wrong, like ask questions, probe. Like trust isn't blind trust. Trust is just like trust that they have your best intentions at heart. And like, I mean, and easier said than done. I mean, like, let's be honest too. I mean, there's a lot of agencies out there that are not great, and a lot of whatever people that have practices, whatever. So, I mean, easier said than done, but I mean, certainly, I can just speak for ourselves. And I mean, we are really, really focused on building trust and collaborative kind of experiences. And, our vision is to, be the agency you can't wait to tell your friends about. Right. And, that means a lot to us. And because we know if we do a great job for you, then that is good for our agency and our business and our growth. And I would suspect most agencies are in that boat. I mean, obviously different agencies have different experience, but that's about the sales process and asking the right questions and right. But yeah, no, it's, I think, fundamentally about trust, and maturity is a function of trust, or trust is a function of maturity, I guess, to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, I think about myself because I'm probably the like least trusting on the team. I have a healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to new relationships. And, I'm not going to be the first person to try something new or that's why I'm married to you, because you push me to do those things. But I just think like, again, if you're moving into this agency relationship, again, like think about it as dating or marriage or right, like just building a relationship, like
Yeah.
constant communication. And the relationships that I look back on from a client perspective where we have had the most success is like constant communication,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether that be dedication to a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, whether it's progress reports and email that you're kind of collaborating on and going back and forth. And the ones that kind of make me scratch my head when I look back are the ones where it's like you didn't hear from someone for 3 or 4 months, and then they're panicked about where things are at or what's going on, or and it's
Yeah.
like in everything it takes two, like it's
Yeah.
a two-way street. So to set your agency up for success, like make sure the door is always open, and you're treating them as part of your team too. If there's a conversation you think they need to be a part of, they probably should be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of maybe leads me to maybe a final point here is that like, it's a two-way street, and you can't just be like, okay, agency, go and do all these things for us and, see you later. Like it doesn't work that way. So like you also need to dedicate some kind of internal resource to manage that agency relationship, because there's approvals that need to happen. There's, changing circumstances that need to be communicated. So, I mean, it needs to be, to your point, an ongoing conversation, and you need to have like, you need to have somebody internally, whether it's the business owner, some administrative person, a marketing person, whoever that is, somebody needs to own that relationship and be the one point person. And I think also having multiple point people can be a challenging thing. It's not that it's not possible or, it doesn't work, but having kind of one main point of contact for the agency, I think is really a good thing, a good practice. And then that main point of contact can kind of manage the internal kind of team and decision making on behalf of that agency to some extent.
Totally.
That one's not a complete hard and fast rule because it depends on how big and complicated the project is.
Totally. But that's a good segue to the next episode. So next time we're going to talk about setting your internal team up for success.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and comment.
3, 2, 1.